All right, hello. Two circles. And we're going to talk about Vesica Pisces and the meaning of Vesica Pisces and um I don't know. Well, I'm just going to try and I mean I don't know how many people actually think about, like, we're looking at stuff. How many people think about the actual meaning behind the thing? I don't know. I don't know how many truth channels do that. I imagine most people do, because I can only imagine my own journey, and I'm constantly questioning, what does this mean, and what's the spiritual meaning of this? And so I'm constantly looking for ways to explain ideas using, you know, sort of divine symbolism or whatever. So we're going to look at the Vesica Pisces, and we're going to look at these, the two circles, the twin towers here, okay, but the two circles that represent the physical side of nature, this red um, line, circle, and then the metaphysical, this blue line with the circle here. And what you have to remember is that this blue line here isn't really anything physical. So imagine that this thing is completely, I mean, realistically, you wouldn't really be able to see this, okay? But it's just there to represent what is the metaphysical. So what we've got going on is, what I believe is, look, as these two things come together, there is a balance point, right? And that forms the first cross. So you see where my cursor is? This is actually where the first cross is formed. This is the kiss, essentially, where the two balls, or the two discs, or whatever you want to call these things, the two circles are just touching, kissing. They're just forming the first cross. Okay? That first cross is a point of divine balance. Now, if I'm in here, see my cursor's in here, this is the physical realm, and I am, so to speak, trapped. I am, what do I want to say? I'm restricted to the rules of the physical world. Okay, I can't really do anything um, other than kind of what is programmed into me at this point. So this is man in nature. This is man in, his natural environment. Okay, and what is over here, I can't really access that. That's divine spiritual balance over this side, as you can tell, because it's a reflection of the physical world. There's a set of rules in the physical world that maintain the structure and balance within the physical world, and that set of rules is coming from over here, and vice versa. In fact, the point which it's coming from, if we wanted to put a point on it, would be right at the center of this cross. There would be a little spot that you couldn't see right at the center of that cross, an infinitely, you know, I don't know what you call it, infinitely small, but yet with infinite potential. Um, and that little point that you can never get to is God. Okay, that's where everything is projected from. A point that you can never quite get to. Okay, the point of pure potential or pure balance. So that's at the center of that cross there. Um, but man can't get over to this side, to this point over here, when he's in his natural environment, right? And when his, let me say, his consciousness is not opened to be able to access this. Okay, now he has certain tools, like, um let me just draw him in here, actually, and then we'll go from there. But this dude is, he's stuck in here, and he cannot he cannot cross over into here to access what I'd call imagination, okay, or the ability to, I don't know, create from a, on a, what would I call it? Oh dear, I should really think of some terms, but on a metaphysical level, creation on a metaphysical level, which is the idea of having just an idea. Okay, but what he does have over here already is, God's got him set up pretty good. He's got his hands, and you'll see primates that have hands that don't go out and build cars and computers and all kinds of other tools and things. So there are other animals in the world that have these tools. As I say, the tools are that the hand, in our case, they have these tools, but they don't really, they don't manifest, these crazy things that we build, right? Now, the problem is man can't access, this sort of metaphysical, unlimited, even though it's unlimited, this metaphysical can be changed, I guess. You see, this projection here is causing this projection here of the metaphysical. Okay. In fact, I don't really know how to explain this correctly, but anyway, that guy can't get through there, right? So the issue is, what we've got to have is we have got to have some kind of gateway to get into that thing. And so what is happening, with the conjunction of the metaphysical and the physical, is that there is a, as this thing moves across to form the Vesica Pisces, that single cross splits, and it splits into two, as you can see right here now, two crosses, the double cross. So the double cross is formed. As soon as a double cross is formed, man has access to the metaphysical. In fact, if you remember what I was saying, that this really isn't, this blue line isn't actually really anything. Okay, there's not really a line here, so to speak. This is just representing the metaphysical, and the metaphysical has now moved to a point where it's accessible. So this guy now, look, I can get into the metaphysical, yeah? I can step into it, if you like, into this gateway here. This isn't really, this line here isn't really here. This is just representing, a point at which this thing is now opened, and this void is opened up right here, and this guy can actually step into this. Okay, he can now access pure thought. Okay, so now that he can access pure thought, what he can do is he can go into there and have an idea, seed an idea, and then he can step back out of that thing, and in fact he can seed an idea and he can manifest that idea. And the idea is essentially being born from going into here with a seed, having an idea, and then that thing is manifested back out of there. So this is why we have the idea of the, the phallic symbol going into the Vesica Pisces, placing a seed there, and that seed grows into an idea that is now manifested into a child, which then comes back out of this thing, and is born, is created from this thing. So what the Vesica Pisces essentially is representing as well is the idea of creativity, being able to create something, not only being able to have the idea itself, but actually being able to create the thing as well. So being able to manifest that idea. So this is what the Vesica Pisces is. This is why God shows us that with the way we reproduce. Okay, a seed is placed into the Vesica Pisces, or something. The phallic symbol man goes into the Vesica Pisces. Yeah, a seed is sparked in that place, which then manifests and grows and materializes. Because don't forget, this is half. Not only it's half physical and half metaphysical. So that thing grows in there and then is birthed from there. Okay, so what we end up with is we end up with the creation of something. Now, again, there's nothing wrong. This whole picture here is balanced. There's nothing wrong with creating something as long as the thing that you create is balanced in itself. It's like, imagine there wasn't anybody else about, and you're out in the middle of a vast area of land, and so you had the idea to build a house, and there's some rocks over there, and you go use another rock as a hammer, and you shape those rocks and stack them up, and then there's some wood over there, and you use a rock to turn it into an axe, and then you go chop down some trees, and you use those trees to build this house, and you've not harmed anybody in that process. You've used natural resources in the area, stuff. You've not destroyed vast quantities of area, okay, to produce something that's going to be wasted. You've used, when you're in that state, you're only really doing as much work as you really want as is necessary. Okay, when you're in that natural environment. Okay, so any time that you're kind of working for yourself, efficiency takes over, and also, do you want to spend all this extra energy to produce something extra than you need? You don't do that. So when you're in that, that balanced state of still staying around in nature and using, ideas that you have in regards to nature, you tend to stay in a balanced state. Now, when you have all these fantastical ideas that just keep growing on one another, and all of a sudden now you're mining ore to make a better axe, and now instead of just using the stone that's lying there in the field, you're digging up vast quantities of land to make bricks out of clay, and then you've got to chop down forests to fire those bricks to make and then you've got to dig up limestone to fire that limestone and so you can make your lime mortar to stick your bricks together. You see how what happens is this idea of doing things a little bit better, and when you have unlimited resources in order to do that, and you don't think about, well, what's the knock-on effect? When you don't contemplate all of the negativity and all the anti-balancing things that are happening, you just go whole hog into the thing, and you just go out of control, okay, with the greed and the gluttony. And that's exactly what happens. Man can't just stay, at this point. Okay, what happens is he's got to have more and more and more, and what ends up happening is that this thing basically, because we go into it, as we're at a nice balance point, and then we just can't resist anymore. And so the more we go into this thing, the more this thing shifts and grows. The more this is, the Vesica Pisces at this point, when it gets past a certain point and starts growing, what is happening is this thing is turning into the matrix here. Okay, as this thing, as this thing swells, it's turning into the matrix. And let me see if I can just adjust this down just a little bit, because I want to go over the top. But so this thing grows and grows and grows and grows and grows. Okay, until eventually what happens is it consumes everything, everything in the physical world. And the physical world basically is completely destroyed at this point. It's completely under the control of the matrix, the corrupted metaphysical, which is, this is why the Matrix in the film, The Matrix, is a construct. It's not the natural world anymore. Okay. So at this point, the double cross. So at this point, the double cross looks great. Yeah, we've got the double cross, and it looks really good. This is what happens. When people talk about the double cross, they think something's going to go their way. But what ends up happening is that at some point that double cross gets to a point where you realize that you've been screwed. And what ends up happening is you've been gobbled up by the matrix. You've been taken into, this is the dam now. Here, this is the matrix. This is us trapped inside the Hoover Dam at this point. The Hoover, the double O that becomes the hover, the O. Okay. So the number 8 has now become this thing's been eaten. It's been ated. Ated. 8 has been ate into an O. Anyway, at this point, there's a realization. When it's gotten this bad, which is where we're at now, I reckon, there's a realization, and the trick really hurts at this point. The double cross has been fulfilled. Okay. Now, we can't. The reason why we go into this system is because the body drives us. The physical body drives us. Yeah. But when we remove our natural environment, when we step into the matrix here, when we go into the matrix, out of our natural environment, that's when all hell breaks loose. So as this thing eats us, the double cross is revealed, and we are essentially at that point dead as well. We've gone completely into the matrix. We're essentially not living anymore. We're zombies. And what has to happen is we have to awaken. And so when you're in the darkness, eventually you wake up. Once things have gotten bad enough, people will wake up. And so the double cross now, the bittersweetness of the double cross is going to run in reverse. And what the double cross represents now, the double cross represents this idea of enlightenment. And as we become more and more enlightened, because of the trick that was played on us, and because we're able to understand more about the way the world works and the symbolism that's in the world, and we're able to understand more about balance, the double cross begins to represent an actual level of spiritual enlightenment. Okay, so this is the sort of, when I say it's bittersweet, it's also sweet bitter. I don't know. It goes from sweet to bitter to sweet. Okay, and so this becomes sweet again, and so the double cross becomes something that's, becomes a very divine thing again. And at which point, we rely less and less on the matrix. We realize that, when we're in that thing, we can become corrupted, and so people will automatically, hopefully, at least whoever's left around will have got that amount of knowledge that, you've got to be very wary about your actions in the world. Anyway, this thing's going to move to a point where it comes back to a single cross, and what's going to happen is at some point we're going to forget about all that, and the whole thing's going to come back round, and it's going to start again. And essentially, once it gets to that point, basically it's going to start again. Basically it starts again, and we go back into, so it's just this cycle, of going in and coming out. And you know, we could be in this state forever like this, but the problem is, if you're in this state, you don't get to experience, you know, being a god. Basically, you don't get to experience creating as such. You can be an animal, a plant, you know, and still have that conscious connection and that conscious whatever, but you don't get to really experience creating for yourself, so to speak. So that's what we're here to be, is we're here to be creators. Unfortunately, what happens is there's a few creators, and then everybody else works for those people, basically, and the labor is given up. You know, I can give you some more symbolism here with the legal system. You know, when we are balanced like this is wonderful, right? And in fact, when we go into the matrix, you know, starting in there, what's interesting about the whole thing is, if we were to look at this thing and put a line across the top of here and a line across the bottom here where my cursor is, what you end up with is the hourglass shape. And so at this point, you know, time is flowing perfectly. Yeah. And this is where man is designed to live, in the here and now. Yeah. Right at this point right here, where the sands of time are flowing perfectly, right at this cross is where man is supposed to live, in the here and now. But what happens is, we go into the matrix and that flow is disrupted. And if you notice, what happens is, the potential for any time to really flow, not only is it corrupted with this sort of blockade right here, but also it's getting like there's time is running out. If you can see what I'm saying, the hourglass is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until finally it disappears right here. You know, what is happening is, you know, at this point we are being trapped. This is what the legal system does with a contract. It takes the purpose of a contract. For those that you don't know, the purpose of a contract is to bind a man out of the here and now. It's to bind a man from being able to make a decision in the here and now. Okay? So it's taking man out of time. A concept that's kind of difficult to understand, but once you do understand it, now you understand why the legal system exists. Because if we all operated in the here and now, things would be a lot different. But because people want protectionism, because people want to be able to potentially not lose money because one man changed his mind, this is what this does, is it basically locks man into not being able to change his mind. Okay, not being able to be in the here and now and change his mind, you know. And of course, time, the flow of time, is the same as the flow of money and the flow of energy. Those are all the same concept. Time is money, time is energy. And what God does is he gives everybody an equal amount of time. You know, one man has the same amount of time as the next man in the here and now. That's not to say one man won't live for 80 years and another man might only live for 40 years. Well, that guy's only got half as much time. But we're not worried about how much actual time one individual man has in the world. What we're looking at is, how much time does a man have to exchange with another man that is in the world at the same time as he is in the world. And if you look at how the flow of time happens between men, it happens equally. You know, I can exchange my time with the guy next door to me equally, because we're experiencing time the same. We're experiencing the here and now. Okay, now when, you know, if that guy dies, then I can't exchange my time with him anymore. But you know, when we're alive together and we can exchange time in the here and now equally, we have equal amount of time. That's pretty difficult to understand because that time is constantly flowing. Anyway, without making this thing way too complicated, that's what's going on. As we go into the matrix, into the legal system further and further and further, more contracts, more control, and time is removed. We've gone completely into Pandora's box. I mean, this blue thing here is Pandora's box. And what happens is that gateway is opened. In fact, really, Pandora's box, both of these things, and the gateway is Pandora's box. And that thing is opened. And that's where we're going into. Yeah. Once we're in there, we are screwed, basically, because of what causes that problem is our physical beings' wants and desires. They're completely natural wants and desires. The problem is, when I step in here, it's different from living. If I'm just in here, okay, I cannot, get into here to manifest, to, number one, to have the idea and then to manifest it. But once this thing is opened, this Vesica Pisces represents creation. Once I can get in here, I can have the idea and I can manifest the idea. Okay, in here. And once I get in here, this thing starts growing because I'm manifesting more and more ideas. And it grows and it grows and it grows until it consumes. But the problem is, this thing here, the wants and desires, now are unchecked, because before I couldn't manifest and create those things that would fulfill me more and more and more. Once I get into here, I can. This thing will fulfill all my wants and desires. Yeah, this is why we desire this thing in the bedroom. Okay. What else do I want to say about this? Anyway, basically, at some point, what is going to happen is, the ring, the crown of thorns is on there. This is the crown of thorns is more like the what would I want to say? It's more like the container of the matrix. It's the like when you were containing animals back in the olden days, that's what you would use, like a thorny fence of some description, to contain the livestock, to control your livestock. You'd use this thorn bushes and whatnot to create a hedge, or you'd use branches taken from the whatever tree, the thorny trees, and you'd put it around to control, to maintain control of the livestock, and that is the crown of thorns. And once we've moved through that crown, we have the crowning of the new child happening. So it's exactly the same time, because the crown of thorns occurs and then the thing's popping back out again. This thing's moving across and the head is popping out. Okay, and we have the crown of the new king here coming out of the long dark tunnel, rebirth. Okay, until the whole thing is birthed. So that's what we got going on. And this halo, or this halo, is slightly different from the idea of the crown of thorns halo. Okay, same kind of symbolism, and in some cases it may be difficult to separate them depending on how the thing appears in the world. So that's, at some point you have to sometimes add a little bit of thought into what's actually occurring in like the context of the situation, to see whether you're dealing with holy crown or a a crown that's controlling, or a crown that's representing, being out of control, not under control anymore, out of control, not under control. So there's different, got to think about these things a little bit. You can't just lump everything. It's a little bit more difficult. It's not so cut and dry sometimes. Okay. I'm gonna leave it there. God knows how long I've waffled on that one for, but hopefully we'll be popping out of this thing soon, and the flow of time will return, and we'll get back to a more balanced point here again, like this, rather than where we're at now. We're probably somewhere right here, really. We're pretty close to being completely consumed, I would say, and in fact, maybe that is the representation of this final cross on the 8th of April. And what else do I want to say? There was something that was just on my mind then, and I can't think of it now. But again, this thing that's coming across is the skull. Yeah, you put the grey on, you go to this, and you do some little dark spots here, and here's a C on the moon, and here's a C on the moon, and here's another C on the moon, and you can soon realize that thing there that's coming across the sky is the skull, is the moon, and the pathway that it's going to take, X marks the spot. These are the bones, which I think, I don't know if it was Lambda that pointed that out, or who actually pointed that out, that it was the bones, where he got it from, or whether that was him or what. But this is what I want to point out: the fact that the skull and crossbones is pretty important, with the idea of this is the moon. In fact, you could, put a little nose hole here, and this is what the moon is. It's the skull. I'm leaving it there. Just waffling now. Alright, thanks for watching. And I will say one more thing. This, I will just, if you've not watched my other videos as well, this idea of a very similar looking object, like this thing, which has also been on a trajectory, and gone off into, let's get rid of this a minute. So this other thing that has gone off, this Pluto, which has gone off on a long voyage way away, and is finally returning, and this thing that looks like a bloody dog head, with the this is like Rolf's cartoon time. This is not a very good dog. But the dog head on Pluto, the god that has left and now is returning, like the Holy Spirit returning back to man, back to save us, back to enlighten us again. So anyway, I'm leaving it there. That's it. I'm done. I got another video coming up shortly on Madonna's death date on. I'm saying this quite confidently, on the 31st of January. Probably won't happen, but we'll go through those numbers and number jumps here shortly. Alright, thanks for watching. Cheers. Bye.